Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Oxygen for the Soul. This week's parasha is Parashat Vayigash, and it is a epic parasha this week. So if you've been following along, you know that this is in the middle of a cliffhanger. We left off last week with Yosef as the viceroy of Egypt, the second most powerful man in the world at the time, in the ancient world. And as he is, saving the world from famine, he ends up noticing a trend of these Jewish boys that had the name of Ben Yaakov end up showing up at different gates in the city. We know that Yaakov sends his children down to Mitzrayim to buy grain from Egypt because the world was going through a famine. Even though he had enough for his family, he was so concerned about the perception of the people around him, saying, "Oh, look how much food! Look how much wheat and grain that Yaakov's family has." He didn't want to create an evil eye, so he sends the kids down Ki'ilu as if they're looking to buy grains. So they go and they end up. Yosef recognizes the names. He ends up calling out the brothers. He does a couple of tricks to see if they're really sincere. Have they grown? Have they changed? And now for the ultimate test. The ultimate test to see if his brothers have actually gone through any kind of reform from selling him into slavery were they willing to protect and give up their own lives to save the youngest brother, Yosef's brother, right, biological brother, same mother, I guess it might be all biological, to save Yosef's life, to save Benjamin's life. What are they going to do? So Yosef plants a goblet, his goblet, in Benjamin's bag, and they find out that Benjamin was being accused of theft, and now Yehuda, who had sworn to his father to allow Benjamin to come down to begin with, says that he's taking responsibility. If anything happens to Benjamin, it's Ki'ilu. It's as if he will have sinned his whole life before him, and his father, with that promise, allows Benjamin to go down with Yehuda. And now the parsha begins. Okay, this is like one of my most favorite parshiot. If you have not read or seen the midrashim on this week's Torah reading, it's definitely worth finding it and getting them, because they're amazing and they're deep and they're beautiful. Okay, so the parsha begins. Vayigash elav Yehuda. At this point, Yehuda is now approaching the bench. He realizes that Yosef, this viceroy, is being unfair, that he's going above and beyond the law that would necessitate the locking up of Binyamin, and that this king requires a different set of combativeness that he was originally prepared to do. So the pasuk reads like this. Listen to this very carefully. Ready? It says, "Vayigash elav Yehuda," and Yehuda approached him. Vayomer, and he says, "Bi Adoni yidaber na avdecha." Please, my Lord, right? Don't let your servant speak something. Boznei Adoni, let me speak to you. Don't allow your anger to flare up. Avdecha, your servant, ki kamocha kaparo, because who's like you? For you are like Paro. This is his way of kind of, stroking this man's ego, not realizing it's Yosef, of course. And he approaches him. May I approach the bench? Right? Yehuda is the king of the brothers. Remember, it says that he was the official king, even though later on Yaakov appoints Yosef to be the king. And over here, he actually is the king, but Yehuda is the other melech amongst the Jewish people, the other king. Vayigash elav Yehuda. Our commentators ask, what is this? What does this word Vayigash elav Yehuda mean? If you were to write a verse, this storyline in Hebrew, you would simply say Vayigash Yehuda, right? And that's it. You don't have to say elav. What do you mean? Elav, to him, it's obvious. To whom? What do you mean? Of course, he's going to approach the person. So the way some people read this verse is like this: Vayigash elav Yehuda. Who did Yehuda approach? He approached Elav himself. That before he was going to go ahead and approach Yosef, before he was going to go ahead and approach the bench, he wanted to first clarify in his own mind how this was going to play out. Vayigash elav Yehuda. He had to approach himself. Before you're going to go ahead and make an argument, make sure you know what that argument sounds like in your own head. Don't just stop, say, and open up your mouth and speak. Spend some time to clarify exactly what the argument is, and then be Adoni Yidaber now. Let me come and speak and explain myself. So first, Vayigash Elav Yehuda. Now, these words, Vayigash, okay, are found 3 times in all of Tanakh. Okay? There's this word, Vayigash, to approach, there's 3 times. And we already saw it once. So that means this is the second time. The first time, anyone know where? The first time was with Abraham. Abraham Avinu, Vayigash Elav. Abraham approaches God to stop him from destroying Sodom. And the second Vayigash is over here, with Yehuda approaching Yosef. And the third Vayigash is Vayigash Eliyahu El Hashem. Vayigash Eliyahu, a Navi, approaches God. Now it's interesting, there is a famous halacha that says that when we do the silent prayer, the Amidah, we need to take our 3 steps back, right? The 3 steps back. I'm sorry, I just got to take a candy because the air in New York is very dry, and the air in the synagogue is even drier because we have these massive units that suck out all the water in the air. They should have a vending machine here. We should be selling water because people will be buying it all day. You're so thirsty here. I made a bracha earlier. Anyway, so you have this Vayigash, these 3 Vayigashes, and we know that there are 3 steps you need to take back when you're doing Shemona Esrei. And the Chachamim says, the Rokech tells us that the 3 steps we take back represent the 3 Vayigashes that we saw in the Tanakh. The first one was Abraham is pleading with God to save the wicked people. Vayigash, take a step back. The other one was Yehuda taking Vayigash, an approach, right, going into himself for his brothers. And the last one is against Eliyahu, against evil, against the idol worshippers. 3 different approaches. Approaching God for the wicked people, the people that are unsavory, the people that we all too often want to dismiss, our brothers who all too often are family, that we get into arguments with, and we don't give enough the benefit of the doubt. We're too quick to judge. And lastly, evil in the world. God, please stop the evil in the world. These are the 3 steps that we take back. They represent these 3 different Vayigashes. One for the wicked, for our family, and for God, so to speak, to remove all the evil in the planet. Okay? That's what's going on over here. These are not just nice stories that we share with our families on a Friday night dinner so we could have a conversation. These are lifelong spiritual truths that today, 3,800 years later, are still very relevant. In a world of hyperconnectivity, where you and I are constantly looking for feedback on a phone, we're constantly distracted, we're constantly, it's funny, like we're on this device, and I know so many of you, and like there's this weird feeling like ke'ilu, as if you and I are with each other in the same room, but we're not. And there is a barrier. You need to focus. Marie is focusing, I could tell. Gila is focusing. Nat, you're focusing. All of you guys are like, you're there, you're in, right? But there's still this barrier. There's still this barrier here. The screen here does not allow for me and you to connect on some level, right? There's this gap. So on the one hand, we're connected, but we're also disconnected at the same time. It's like a weird thing. Vayigash elav. I can't approach you in this setting. I can't change you. We can share information here, but that's the most I can do here. I can't do anything beyond that. Vayigash elav Yehuda. If Yehuda wants to make a difference to the people around him, if he wants to try to convince Yosef's mind about freeing his brother and trading places with him, the only way he would be able to do that if there was a connection. You can't change people. You can't make connections when you're distant. There's this kind of distance. It doesn't work. You need to go out of your way to figure out a way of finding a connection. So this is better than nothing, obviously. But remember, it's not ideal. Not an ideal relationship. Not the ideal kind of connection that you and I want to have. We want something more. We want something much more profound. So when we're taking back those 3 steps, we're being mindful of the different relationships that you and I need to work on to develop for ourselves. Because in a nutshell, if we are not working on building the connection, we are automatically being disconnected, because this device that has this unique power of connecting me and you and so many people around the world so quickly, instantaneously. We're connected, but at the same moment, it disconnects us from everyone else around us. That is the nature of the game. The nature of this world is that one thing has the ability to do the other thing on the opposite thing as well. But Yosef and Yehuda remind us, these kings, who's supposed to be individuals who are ruled by their honor, ruled by a very deep discipline, okay? You got to approach yourself first. Who do you want to be? What kind of a person do you want to be? Where are you going? What are you doing to be better? Yes, some of you are good already, but all of us can work on being a little bit better. Okay, the perasha then continues, and he speaks about Yosef and Yehuda have this interesting conversation back and forth. I'm going to go into the second aliyah. Sorry. And this is where the highlight comes out, okay? And at this point, Yehuda has made his argument, and the pasuk says, "V'lo yuchal Yosef l'hitapek l'kol hanitzavim alav." Yosef can no longer bear all those that were standing beside him. Can you imagine? He has his brothers; they're all there. He's watched this unfold. Okay, they're defending Binyamin. They're ready to give their life for him. And he could be thinking so many different things. What do you think Yosef was thinking about this moment? Yehuda is making the argument, free the brother to save the father. Because Yaakov won't survive if he loses another son. We made this mistake before. Yosef sees the regret. But v'lo yachol Yosef hitapek l'kol hanitzavim alav. He could no longer bear it was overwhelming emotion. He got so emotional. He said, "Everyone, get out of the room. I want the throne room to myself." And there was not one man who stood in the room when Yosef made himself known to the brothers. Listen to these words. And now he cries. We don't hear Yosef crying once. He's sold by his brothers, thrown into a pit of snakes and scorpions. There's no cry. He's hired by Potiphar and seduced by her and then thrown into jail, no crying over there in jail. Okay? Takes on this hard job, 7 years of plenty, now 7 years of famine. He's dealing with his brothers. And the first time now, you hear him cry. That says, Kol ish me'elav v'yiten et kolo bebechi v'yishmu Mitzrayim v'yishma bet paro. Everyone heard what was going on. Vayomer Yosef el achav, ani Yosef ha'od avichai. I am your brother Yosef. Is my father still alive? Wait, pasuk continues. It says, V'lo yochlu echav la'anototo. The brothers could not answer him. Ki nivhalu mipanav. They were startled by his presence. They were shocked. Like total shock. Totally unprepared for this moment in time. Now, Chachamim tell us that this is one of those terrifying moments, the Ani Yosef, or the Od Avichai moment, where you have super clarity. Imagine right now, whatever your doubts are, whatever you're going through, imagine a rip in reality right now, and God comes out and he says, "Hey, it's me, I'm here, don't worry about it, everything's good." No more uncertainty, no more lack of clarity, no more ambiguousness. It's super clear that Judaism is true, its laws are true, and now everything else that you've been struggling with, dealing with back and forth, religion, no religion, how much is too much, am I losing my identity, am I becoming a fanatic, is religion opium for the masses, am I really thinking through this? You start going through all those things, and there's that one moment of super clarity. That was this moment for the brothers. Everything that they did led up to this one point in time where they realized Yosef's dreams came true. They realized that Yaakov was going to have to come down and bow down also. They realized all their mistakes. But that's not how Yosef sees it. Now, before I move on, I want to point this out. It says, Vayomer Yosef el achav, ani Yosef ha'od avichai. I am Yosef, is my father still alive? What do you mean? What kind of a question was that? He knew his father was still alive. Why was he asking, how old Avichai? A rhetorical question, meaning you guys were so concerned about, Benjamin's life and it impacting Benjamin, my father. What about you when you did this to me? What about when you threw me into the pit? When my brothers took me and sold me into slavery for I am so sorry. This is probably so uncomfortable to listen to, Mechila. You sold me into slavery, and you weren't concerned then about my father and his life, and now, is my father still alive? Did he survive? That's one way of understanding it, and I don't think that's the right way to understand it. And I'll prove it to you. Listen to what he says. He says, Ha'od Avichai, not is my father still alive, but is my father still alive Bikirbi in me. Yosef wasn't concerned about, he wasn't petty, he wasn't looking for revenge. He could have gotten revenge 1,000 times at this point. He didn't do that. He wanted to know whether or not his brothers were remorseful and if they repented. He was more concerned about their ability to grow spiritually. There was nothing petty over here. Vayomer Yosef Alachav, Geshuna Elai, he says to them, don't worry about it, guys, come close to me. Vayomer Ani Yosef, I am your brother, Hashem echartem oti, you sold me to Egypt. V'ata, and now, lo ti'atzvu, v'lo yichar b'einechem, do not be afraid, don't be sad, don't feel like you're troubled, ki mechartem, he sold me. Ki lemechya shalachni elokim lefanecha, God sent me here to be the preserver of life. God sent me here before you so that I could make sure that the world is sustained. There's 5 more years left of this famine, and we're just in the middle of God. God put me here to make sure that you are delivered from this terrible, terrible famine. Now, this is the pasuk I want you to kind of double down on and just understand Yosef and his genius and greatness. Va'ata, and now, this is the chapter 45. So, Mem He pasuk Chet says Va'ata, and now Lo atem shalachtem oti. You didn't send me down here. Ki Elukim, it was God that sent me down here. Ve'yesemeni la'av la'paro, and He made me a father to Paro, because he's his counselor. Ula adon l'kol bet u'moshe b'chol aretz Mitzrayim, and a lord over all the houses, and a ruler over the entire land of Egypt. All right, famous words. Guys, Yosef was in the most difficult of circumstances. He had every reason to cry, and he was more concerned about his brother's ability to grow spiritually. He wasn't worrying about the petty things. Here, this verse, you're misunderstanding it. He's not saying over here, oh, look, I'm the master of all Egypt. Look at it closely. Veyisemeni la'av la'paro, and he put me as a master into Paro, right? And I put God in all the houses that I rule over in the land of Egypt. What was Yaakov's mission? What was his mission? His mission was to bring monotheism to the world. His mission was to teach that there is one God. Why is that important? Why is that the Jewish mission? You and I are supposed to be God's ambassadors, for better and for worse. You got the job, sorry. Now, what are you doing with that job? That means when people see you, oh, this guy works for God. And by the way, this is why I believe anti-Semitism is such a big issue. When we remind Goyim that we're not doing our job, they don't like it. If we were doing what we're supposed to be doing, of being an Or LeGoyim, right, there'd be no anti-Semitism. There's anti-Semitism because we're not being an Or LeGoyim. We're too worrying about the silly things in this world. But imagine we were like Yosef, someone who clearly has the Spirit of God in him, someone who when they saw him, they're like, wow, that's what it means to believe in God. Someone who's 100% committed, someone who has that kind of clarity, that kind of dedication, that kind of work ethic. Yeah, I want to be around a guy like that. When you and I are making a Kiddush Hashem, right? The brothers, they did not make a Kiddush Hashem over here. This is like the fact that we read the story, it looks so bad for Jews. Jewish brothers sold a brother into slavery for money. Horrible. Now, you have this Jew, the second Jew in exile, by the way, right? Yaakov is the first Jew who lives in exile, comes back to Israel, and now Yosef lives in Israel, and not only that, his kids are born in exile. We'll see this in next week's parasha. That Ephraim and Manasseh are like Reuven and Shimon. He's the first guy to do it. The first guy to have children born in a Gentile land. Not only were they proud Jews, they were spiritually as strong as the brothers who lived in Israel. It's possible to be raised in the diaspora in a multicultural environment and still maintain a very strong, profound Jewish identity. How? If you put God first. That's how you do it. I have 6 kids, and all of them are remarkable. And they grew up in a home where everything we did was for Hashem. Shabbat wasn't just a meal to have nice steaks and fancy dishes and nice suits. It was a way for us to elevate Shabbat so we could elevate our relationship with God. We wanted to make a Kiddush Hashem in everything that we do. If that's at the forefront of what you're doing, how could you not change the world? How could we not end anti-Semitism? If all of us were working on being the best that we can be, of course it will end. That's what Hashem wants. Everything that happens in our lives is through God. It's because of God. Meheru ve'alu elavi. I want you to go and tell my father. Ko amar bencha. This is what your son says. This is the message that Yosef wants to give. Samani elukim la'adon l'kol Mitzrayim. God made me the master of all Egypt? No. Samani, I placed elukim la'adon. I made God the God of all of Egypt. Yosef taught monotheism to the world. Ethical, moral monotheism to the world. That was his success. I did it, Dad. What you're trying to do in a world of pagans with your family, your children, I did with a whole entire country. It's possible. Rada alai al ta'amod, come down to me, don't tarry, don't waste your time. He already planned this. He already sequestered a place in Egypt called Goshen, which was going to be the new place of Jews living in exile, preparing for the great exile. This is not the first time he saw this. The second temple, we all know, was like a halfway point. It was never a real temple. The first temple was all the glory, all the might, all the beauty, everything that was in there was stunning, all the miracles. The second temple had none of that. It was just a way for us to preserve our Jewish identity. We were in exile in the land of Israel. And now, it's 2,000 years later, we needed that exile in the land of Israel to maintain a Jewish identity. We had the Hanukkah story. We just spoke about it. But as we're switching, it's going to be very slight, but if you're sensitive, you'll note that this Shabbat already is starting a little bit later than last week. And then next week a little bit later, and a little bit later. And what's going to end up happening over the next few weeks and months is that the winter is about to come to an end very quickly. It's going to happen very fast. There's like another, 6 weeks of winter? It's going to switch, which means the world is leaving a place of darkness and entering into a place of light. How do we tap into that light? We tap into that light by asking ourselves, how do I want to bring God into this world? That's your motivation. I'm not sure if he's there, find him. You don't have to have all the answers, but you need to be going through a process of figuring it out for yourselves. I don't care what you believe in or don't believe in. I care that you're on a journey searching for answers. Doesn't matter what it looks like at the end. Don't worry about that stuff. Don't worry about the chitzoniyut, the external things. Yosef over here is dressed like an Egyptian. He's got the makeup around his eyes, and he's got the fancy, serpentine, headgear, and, he looks like an Egyptian. And he's telling his brothers, don't worry about it. You could be religious. You could be frum in Egypt. It's okay. He's telling that to them. Imagine like a bunch of Jews from Bnei Brak coming up to Egypt and seeing this guy dressed in Egyptian clothing, and he's saying, yeah, don't worry about it. They're like, are you crazy? This guy's nuts. But everything he says is so true. It's profound. It's powerful. The perasha of Vayigash is about taking steps into going into yourself. The places where we make the most mistakes is with our family. Family reunions can be a blessing and a curse. But often, family is an expression of what's happening, a mirror expression of what's happening inside of ourselves. If our families are messed up, it's because we're messed up. So let's use this time as we are leaving the darkness of winter and preparing ourselves for the summer. Now, if you want to have a nice summer bod, if you want to get that six-pack ready, you got to start working on it now. Do it now. You want to have an amazing Pesach, you want to have an amazing Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, do it now. What's the process going to look like? Bring God into the world, bring God into your life. Stop making excuses. The winter's over. It's going to be beautiful soon. The sun's going to be out. The trees are going to be blooming. You're going to waste another year. You don't have time to waste. There's no time to waste. You have things to fix. Fix it now. Vayigash elav Yehuda. You have to go into yourselves. You want to make changes? You got to connect. You know, you got to connect to first. Be real with who you are. Be clear about what you believe and what you stand for. And then you can stand up to any tyrant, any king, irrespective of his beliefs, and you'll succeed. Vayigash elav. Go into yourselves, and you will be matzliach. Wishing you all an amazing week of clarity, of happiness, of success in all of your tidings. May you have the ability of going into the deepest parts of yourselves so you could express that greatness, that Tzelem Elokim, that special light that only you could express in this world. Looking forward to continuing the conversation. Until next week, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much.